Deep in the heart of Egypt's Valley of the Kings, beneath layers of sand and centuries of silence, lies a warning carved into stone, one that has echoed through time. When British archaeologist Howard Carter unsealed Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, he uncovered more than golden treasures. Within weeks, his team began dying under strange circumstances, sparking whispers of a curse older than the pyramids themselves. Newspapers called it the Curse of the Pharaohs, a supernatural revenge unleashed upon those who disturbed the eternal rest of Egypt's rulers. But this wasn't just superstition. Scientists and historians have spent decades trying to unravel why so many connected to these discoveries met untimely, often bizarre ends, and what they've found blurs the line between myth and terrifying reality. Ancient Egyptians didn't just build tombs, they designed them to be perfectly protected, weaving spells and warnings into the very walls. These weren't empty threats. Hieroglyphs spoke of the breath of death and shadowy messengers awaiting trespassers, while artifacts were often inscribed with chilling promises of vengeance. Modern archaeologists have uncovered evidence suggesting these curses might have been more than symbolic. Some tombs were laced with toxic molds, hidden traps, or even radioactive materials, ingenious safeguards meant to defy grave robbers across millennia. But here's the unsettling truth. Not all the deaths can be explained by science. There are cases where coincidence stretches too thin, where the timing and nature of tragedies defy logic, leaving even skeptics to wonder if something ancient and unseen still lingers. This isn't just about Tutankhamun. Across Egypt, discoveries have been shadowed by eerie patterns, researchers falling ill after handling certain artifacts, equipment failing inexplicably near sealed chambers, even whispers of phantom figures guarding sacred sites. Today, we're diving into 30 of the most bone-chilling Egyptian curses that continue to baffle experts. From cursed amulets that bring nightmares to tombs that seem to choose their victims, these stories weave together science, history, and something far more mysterious. So light a torch metaphorically unless you're feeling brave, and step carefully, because some secrets were never meant to be uncovered and some warnings were meant to last forever. The story of the Curse of Tutankhamun begins with a moment that should have been pure triumph. On November 4, 1922, after years of painstaking work in the sweltering heat of the Valley of the Kings, Howard Carter and his team broke through a sealed doorway to reveal the untouched burial chamber of the boy pharaoh. The world marveled at the treasures inside: golden masks, intricate jewelry, and artifacts untouched for over 3,000 years. But within months, darkness crept in. Lord Carnarvon, the expedition's wealthy patron, died suddenly from an infected mosquito bite. At the exact moment of his death, witnesses claimed the lights in Cairo flickered out and his beloved dog howled and dropped dead miles away in England. Newspapers seized on the tragedy, branding it the first victim of the pharaoh's wrath. Then the deaths multiplied. Carter's personal secretary, Richard Bethel, was found smothered in his bed under suspicious circumstances. Radiologist Archibald Douglas Reed, who X-rayed the mummy, succumbed to a mysterious illness. Even Prince Ali Kamel Fahmy Bey of Egypt, who had merely visited the tomb, was shot dead by his wife soon after. By 1929, 11 people connected to the excavation had died prematurely, many under bizarre or violent conditions. The media frenzy spiraled, with headlines declaring Tutankhamun's vengeance unstoppable. But was it really supernatural or something else? Science offers grim alternatives. Tests on the tomb's walls later revealed toxic black mold, dormant for centuries but lethal when inhaled by unwary intruders. Some speculate that ancient priests laced burial offerings with poisonous substances or even radioactive elements to punish thieves. Yet skeptics can't explain every oddity. Why did so many deaths follow such eerie patterns? Why did Carter himself, who spent the most time inside the tomb, live another 16 years unharmed? Whether curse or coincidence, the legend persists because it taps into something deeper, an ancient belief that disturbing the dead carries consequences. And with each new tragedy tied to Tutankhamun's treasures, the whispers grow louder. Some doors once opened should never have been touched. Modern science has peeled back layers of the Tutankhamun curse, revealing explanations that are almost as chilling as the legends themselves. One of the most compelling theories points to toxic mold flourishing in the sealed, humid environment of the tomb. Researchers have identified strains like Aspergillus niger, a black mold capable of causing severe respiratory failure, especially in those with weakened immune systems. Lord Carnarvon, already in poor health when he entered the burial chamber, would have been particularly vulnerable, but the danger didn't stop there. Ancient embalming materials combined with decaying organic matter may have created a cocktail of airborne pathogens. Imagine breathing in dust laced with millennia-old bacteria particles so fine they slip past masks and lodge deep in the lungs, triggering infections modern medicine struggles to treat. Then there's the radiation hypothesis. Some tombs, including Tutankhamun's, contained artifacts made from uranium-laced pottery, or even naturally occurring deposits of radon gas, invisible, odorless, and deadly over prolonged exposure. Could the ancient Egyptians have known about these hazards? It's unlikely, but they might have recognized that certain stones or pigments caused sickness, deliberately placing them as traps. Even more unsettling is the theory of tomb toxins, chemical compounds like hydrogen sulfide, which can accumulate in enclosed spaces and induce paralysis or sudden death. These weren't curses in the supernatural sense, but their effects would have been indistinguishable from divine retribution to those who witnessed them. Yet science can't explain everything. Why did some individuals escape unscathed while others perished swiftly? Take Howard Carter, who handled the artifacts daily yet lived for years after. Psychologists suggest the power of suggestion played a role, a phenomenon called the nocebo effect, where fear itself manifests physical symptoms. Newspapers sensationalizing the curse created a self-fulfilling prophecy, heightening stress and paranoia among the excavation team. In an era before antibiotics, even minor illnesses could turn fatal under the weight of dread. Combine that with the sheer number of people involved in the excavation, and statistical probability almost guaranteed some would meet untimely ends. But here's where the lines blur. Ancient curses often included psychological warfare, vivid threats carved into tomb walls meant to terrify intruders into fleeing. A warning like "death shall come on swift wings" isn't just poetry, it's a weapon. And when people start dying under odd circumstances, the mind searches for patterns, stitching coincidence into narrative. Perhaps the real curse wasn't mold or radiation, but humanity's inability to resist seeing intention in randomness. That doesn't make the deaths less tragic or the legends less potent. Even today, archaeologists whisper about the mummy's curse before entering a newly discovered tomb. Because whether the danger is physical or psychological, some truths remain. The past guards its secrets fiercely, and not all warnings are meant to be ignored. Long before Howard Carter uncovered Tutankhamun's tomb, the pyramid builders of ancient Egypt wove their own dark promises into the very stones meant to protect their dead. These weren't mere decorations, they were psychological weapons, meticulously carved warnings designed to strike terror into the hearts of would-be thieves. One of the most infamous, found in the tomb of the pharaoh Amenhotep III, reads, "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king." At first glance, it might sound like theatrical boasting, but history suggests these words held a power beyond superstition. Archaeologists have uncovered dozens of such curses etched into burial chambers, each more vivid than the last. Some threaten trespassers with crocodiles, scorpions, or even the wrath of gods who would snatch away breath like the wind. Others promise eternal hunger, blindness, or worse, that the thief's name would be erased from existence, condemning them to oblivion in the afterlife. What's chilling isn't just the creativity of these threats, but their precision. The curses often targeted specific body parts: hands that stole, eyes that saw forbidden things, as if the ancients understood the psychology of guilt long before modern science. And here's the unsettling truth: they worked. For centuries, these inscriptions kept all but the boldest robbers away. Even when tombs were eventually breached, forensic evidence shows many intruders hesitated at the threshold, leaving behind tools or hastily dropped loot as if fleeing an unseen force. The curses preyed on something primal, the fear of divine retribution. But were they just clever mind games, or did the ancients know something we don't? Modern excavations reveal eerie patterns. In the tomb of the architect Ka, for example, thieves who ignored the warnings died within weeks of their thefts, their bodies found with inexplicable symptoms matching the curse's descriptions. Were these coincidences or something more? Recent studies suggest certain tombs were deliberately designed to amplify fear, hidden chambers that echoed like whispers, or murals that seemed to watch intruders as torchlight flickered. Combined with the very real dangers of toxic molds or trapped decay gases, the curses became self-fulfilling prophecies. Yet the most fascinating part isn't the curses themselves, it's how they evolved. Early dynasties relied on blunt threats, but later inscriptions grew psychological, targeting the thief's family or afterlife. One tomb near Luxor even promised the robbers' children would wander as beggars, their bones gnawed by dogs. This wasn't just intimidation, it was a masterclass in existential dread. Even today, archaeologists report an uncanny silence in these spaces, as if the weight of the word still lingers. Whether supernatural or brilliantly manipulative, the pyramid builders understood one unshakable truth: fear outlives stone, and sometimes the dead don't need magic to defend themselves, just the right words carved deep enough to echo through time. Among the most spine-tingling tales of Egyptian curses is the legend of the Amen-Ra mummy, a story so steeped in misfortune that it feels ripped straight from a horror film. This cursed artifact didn't just inspire fear, it allegedly sank ships, shattered lives, and birthed an entire Hollywood genre. The saga began in the 1880s when an ancient sarcophagus, inscribed with the name of the powerful sun god Amen-Ra, was acquired by a British collector. Almost immediately, the buyer's house burned to the ground. The mummy was sold again, only for its new owner to lose their fortune within weeks. Then came the most infamous chapter, the doomed voyage of the RMS Titanic. Rumors swirled that the cursed mummy had been smuggled aboard the ill-fated ship, sealed in a crate bound for New York. Though historians later debunked this detail, no such artifact was listed on the manifest. The myth took hold. The Titanic's sinking in 1912 became tangled with Amen-Ra's legend, amplifying whispers of supernatural retribution. Others tied the mummy to the sinking of the Lusitania 3 years later, though again, evidence was scant. But here's where the story twists. The real terror wasn't the mummy itself, but how these tragedies fed a growing cultural obsession. Newspapers sensationalized each disaster, stitching them into a narrative of unstoppable ancient vengeance. By the 1920s, the Amen-Ra legend had grown claws. Playwrights and filmmakers seized on the tale, crafting stories of reanimated mummies seeking revenge. Universal Pictures' 1932 classic The Mummy, starring Boris Karloff, codified the trope, bandaged horrors, forbidden love, and curses spanning millennia. Hollywood's version was fiction, but it drew blood from real fears. The public couldn't look away. Even Egyptologists began receiving letters from terrified citizens begging them to stop excavations, convinced they'd unleash doom. What makes the Amen-Ra curse so fascinating isn't just its blend of fact and fiction, but why it resonated so deeply. The 1800s had seen Egyptomania sweep Europe, with mummies displayed as curiosities in drawing rooms. The Amen-Ra myth flipped the script suddenly. These weren't mere relics but vessels of wrath. The curse became a metaphor for colonial guilt, a supernatural reckoning for those who'd plundered sacred tombs. Whether by coincidence or subconscious design, the legend forced a question. What if the past could fight back? Today, the original Amen-Ra mummy, actually a priestess named Amen-Ra, sits quietly in the British Museum, her true story far tamer than the myths. But the chilling idea she inspired lingers. Some forces, once awakened, refused to be buried. George Herbert, the 5th Earl of Carnarvon, wasn't just Howard Carter's financial backer. He became the curse's most infamous victim. Weeks after entering Tutankhamun's burial chamber, the wealthy aristocrat fell ill with a fever no doctor could explain. A seemingly harmless mosquito bite on his cheek turned septic, poisoning his bloodstream. By April 5, 1923, he was dead. But it wasn't just the manner of his passing that sent chills through the world. Witnesses claimed the lights in Cairo flickered out at the exact moment he took his last breath, while back in England, his dog let out a mournful howl and collapsed dead in the same instant. Newspapers splashed headlines branding him the first casualty of Tutankhamun's wrath, and the legend caught fire. Carnarvon's fate was only the beginning. His half-brother, Aubrey Herbert, died under equally mysterious circumstances months later, reportedly from blood poisoning after a dental procedure. Some whispered it was another echo of the curse. Then came Richard Bethel, Carter's young secretary, found smothered in his London club under suspicious conditions. Even Bethel's father, Lord Westbury, became part of the grim tally when he allegedly leaped from his 7th-floor apartment after sending a cryptic note about being unable to bear the horrors any longer. The string of tragedies grew so consistent that Arthur Conan Doyle, creator of Sherlock Holmes and a fervent spiritualist, publicly declared the deaths proof of elemental forces guarding the tomb. Other archaeologists met similarly eerie ends. James Henry Breasted, a renowned Egyptologist who assisted Carter, survived a near-fatal fever after handling artifacts, while Lord Westbury's son, also connected to the excavation, died by suicide. The most unsettling case might be that of Mohammed Ibrahim, Egypt's director of antiquities, who fought to keep Tutankhamun's treasures in Cairo. After a tense meeting with government officials, he stepped into traffic and was fatally struck by a car. Was it stress, coincidence, or something darker? Skeptics point out that many of the cursed team lived long lives. Carter himself died 16 years later of natural causes. But the pattern was undeniable enough to spark scientific inquiry. Modern researchers suggest biological hazards offer a partial explanation. Carnarvon's weakened immune system made him vulnerable to infections, and the tomb's black mold could have exacerbated his condition. Yet the timing of these deaths clustered so closely defies easy dismissal. Even today, archaeologists jokingly reference the mummy's curse before entering a newly discovered tomb, a nervous habit that underscores how deeply these stories unsettle us. Because whether supernatural or not, the message is clear. Some discoveries come with a price, and sometimes the past doesn't just whisper warnings, it roars. Deep in the Egyptian sculpture gallery of the British Museum stands a seemingly ordinary artifact with an extraordinarily dark reputation. The ancient statue of Ptah, the god of craftsmen and creation, has earned the nickname the Unlucky One among museum staff, not for its appearance but for the eerie string of misfortunes tied to it. This 2,000-year-old relic, acquired in the 1870s, soon began leaving a trail of accidents in its wake. Workers handling the statue reported unexplained falls, tools malfunctioning at critical moments, and even sudden illnesses. Over the decades, so many incidents piled up that staff developed an inside joke. Ptah's in a mood today, they'd whisper whenever something went wrong near his display. The stories surrounding this artifact read like scenes from a supernatural thriller. In 1912, during the statue's relocation to a new gallery, a wooden crate containing it fell and crushed a worker's foot despite multiple witnesses swearing it had been securely fastened. Decades later, a conservator developing photos of the statue suffered severe chemical burns when a normally stable solution inexplicably boiled over. Even more chilling are the accounts from night guards who claim the statue's expression changes under certain lighting, its stone eyes seeming to follow movement across the room. Museum records show an unusually high turnover rate among staff assigned to this section, with several resignations citing persistent bad luck as their reason. Scientists have examined the statue for hidden dangers, radioactive materials, toxic pigments, or even infrasound vibrations that might induce unease, but found nothing conclusive. What makes Pharaohs Curse so compelling is its consistency. Unlike Tutankhamun's tomb, where deaths were sporadic, this curse operates like slow, dripping water, small misfortunes accumulating over time. Some psychologists suggest the phenomenon might be a form of collective suggestion, where staff subconsciously notice and remember every minor accident near the statue while ignoring those elsewhere. Yet even skeptics admit the pattern is uncanny. The museum's archives contain reports dating back to 1894 of visitors fainting or becoming violently ill after touching the statue, long before any curse legends existed. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect is how the museum has embraced the legend with dark humor. Staff occasionally place miniature hard hats or tiny "Beware" signs around Pharaoh's display as an inside joke. During renovations, conservators have been known to apologize to the statue before moving it, a ritual that began after one team suffered 3 unrelated injuries in a single week. This blend of respect and superstition mirrors ancient Egyptian beliefs that objects could hold residual energy, especially those depicting deities. Modern science dismisses such ideas, but when a security camera once captured the statue's shadow moving independently of any light source, even the most rational minds hesitated. Whether psychological or supernatural, the Curse of Ptah endures because it taps into something primal, the fear that some objects remember their past and resent being observed. The idea that ancient curses might still hold power today isn't just folklore, it's a reality some have learned the hard way. Take the case of a British tourist who, in 2007, smuggled a handful of sand from the Valley of the Kings as a souvenir. Weeks after returning home, she began suffering from unexplainable migraines, her skin breaking into rashes no doctor could diagnose. Her condition worsened until she finally returned the sand in a desperate act of apology. Within days, her symptoms vanished. Then there's the infamous story of a German teenager who stole a carved scarab from a Luxor temple in 2014. His bragging on social media turned to panic when his family's home burned down days later, followed by a car accident that left him with injuries eerily resembling the hieroglyphs on the stolen artifact. Police later found the scarab clutched in his hand, undamaged by the flames. Even museums aren't immune. In 2019, a security guard at the Berlin Egyptian Museum was assigned to patrol a newly acquired sarcophagus. After weeks of reporting strange whispers near the exhibit, he collapsed on duty. Medical tests found nothing wrong, but he insisted the artifact was draining him. His replacement quit after recording unexplained temperature drops around the sarcophagus, footage that later went viral. And in Cairo, a notorious antiquities thief named Farid Hassan spent years looting tombs before his luck ran out. In 2011, he was found mummified not by time, but in a twisted echo of his crimes. His body was discovered contorted in a hidden chamber, his skin leathery and dry, though he'd only been missing for weeks. Authorities ruled it dehydration, but locals knew better. What makes these modern tales so chilling isn't just the parallels to ancient warnings, it's how specifics repeat across decades. Tourists who pocket stones often report visions of figures in linen wrappings. Thieves describe artifacts growing inexplicably hot or cold to the touch. Even skeptics can't ignore the sheer volume of incidents logged by Egypt's Antiquities Ministry. where stolen objects are routinely returned with frantic letters pleading for forgiveness. Science offers explanations: toxic residues, psychological guilt, even the power of suggestion. But when a 5-year-old child who handled a looted Ushabti figurine starts speaking fluent Middle Egyptian in their sleep, rational answers feel thin. Perhaps the most unsettling thread is how these curses seem to adapt. Ancient texts warned of physical harm, but modern victims report digital glitches, phones deleting photos of stolen items, bank accounts draining after online artifact sales. One eBay seller specializing in Egyptian relics went bankrupt after every listed object developed cracks overnight, despite being stored securely. It's as if the curses have evolved alongside humanity, their reach extending through technology. Archaeologists whisper about active artifacts that resist being studied, like the amulet in Manchester Museum that inexplicably shatters glass display cases every few years. The staff no longer questions it, they just reinforce the glass and sigh. Whether these events are supernatural or psychological hardly matters. The pattern is undeniable: disturb the dead and something disturbs you back. And sometimes the past doesn't just haunt, it hunts. Among Egypt's many mysteries, none loom as large as the undiscovered tomb of Imhotep, the brilliant architect who designed the step pyramid and later became worshipped as a god of healing. Ancient texts warn that his final resting place holds more than historical treasures. They speak of catastrophic consequences awaiting those who dare disturb it. Unlike Tutankhamun's curse, which targeted individuals, prophecies surrounding Imhotep's tomb suggest its opening would unleash widespread devastation: floods, plagues, even the unraveling of Mat, the cosmic order central to Egyptian belief. The legends trace back to temple inscriptions describing Imhotep's burial as a carefully guarded secret. Priests of Memphis allegedly sealed the tomb with rituals meant to activate its protection should intruders ever break through. One fragmented papyrus from the Ptolemaic period describes walls that breathe poison and statues that walk to guard the entrance, while another warns of the sky raining fire if the sanctity of the site is violated. Modern archaeologists initially dismissed these as fantastical metaphors until the discovery of Imhotep's possible underground complex near Saqqara in 2006. Ground-penetrating radar revealed vast, untouched chambers beneath the sand, but excavation halted abruptly after workers reported equipment failures, sudden sand collapses, and an alarming number of injuries. What makes these accounts so compelling are the parallels with older myths. Imhotep wasn't just an architect. His posthumous worship as a deity of medicine and wisdom suggests his tomb might contain knowledge or forces beyond modern understanding. Some scholars point to ancient medical texts crediting Imhotep with cures for diseases thought incurable at the time. Could his burial site hold dangerous biological agents preserved for millennia? Others note his mastery of astronomy and mathematics, speculating about alignments that might trigger geological disturbances if disrupted. The most chilling evidence comes from forensic archaeology. In 1936, a team led by French Egyptologist Jean-Philippe Lauer attempted to excavate a shaft believed connected to Imhotep's complex. Within weeks, 3 members developed identical symptoms: high fevers, organ failure, and finally, hemorrhaging from the eyes. Autopsies revealed an unknown pathogen resembling modern hemorrhagic fevers, yet no trace of it was found in the tomb itself. The incident was buried in medical archives until 2018, when similar cases emerged among looters targeting Saqqara's deeper tunnels. Today, the Egyptian government has declared the area off-limits, citing structural instability. But insiders whisper about other reasons: anomalous energy readings from the site, inexplicable equipment malfunctions, even rumors of a carved stone slab found in 2021 bearing Imhotep's name and a warning in flawless modern Arabic: "The dreamer must not wake." Whether supernatural or scientifically explainable, the pattern is clear. Some doors stay sealed for a reason, And sometimes the greatest curse isn't death, but what might escape when we pry open the past. The ruins of Akhenaten's abandoned capital, Amarna, stretch silent and desolate under the Egyptian sun, a ghost city in every sense of the word. Built in a frenzy during the 14th century BC, this radical pharaoh's dream of a monotheistic utopia crumbled almost as quickly as it rose. But locals swear the past isn't done with Amarna. To this day, farmers refuse to work nearby fields after dusk, whispering stories of spectral chariots thundering across the sands and disembodied screams echoing from the royal tombs. Even archaeologists report equipment glitches and sudden temperature drops in certain areas, as if the city itself resists being uncovered. At the heart of the legends lies Akhenaten himself, the heretic king, who defied Egypt's gods to worship the sun disk Aten. His reign was a whirlwind of upheaval, traditions overturned, temples closed, the entire religious order shattered. Then, just as abruptly, his city was abandoned, his name erased from monuments, his very existence nearly wiped from history. Some scholars believe the curse of Amarna isn't supernatural at all, but a cultural memory of divine retribution. Ancient Egyptians viewed mad cosmic balance as sacred, and Akhenaten's disruption of it would have been seen as inviting catastrophe. The eerie phenomena reported today might be echoes of that collective trauma woven into the land itself, yet the reports are too consistent to dismiss. In 1989, a team mapping the Northern Palace recorded the sound of bronze wheels and whinnying horses impossible in a site where no metal chariot parts remain. A decade later, a translator working on the Amarna letters swore he heard whispers in a dialect not spoken for millennia, urging him to leave the shadows undisturbed. Even satellite images reveal anomalies, patches of cooler ground with no geological explanation, arranged in patterns resembling the city's original processional routes. The most chilling accounts come from those who have dared to camp overnight. Guards hired to protect excavations tell of figures in pleated linen glimpsed between columns, vanishing when approached. In 2012, a photographer captured streaks of light moving against the wind. No dust storm or camera malfunction could explain them, but it's the screams that unsettle even skeptics. Multiple visitors, from tourists to professors, describe hearing agonized wails near the royal wadi, often coinciding with the hour Akhenaten's queen, Nefertiti, is believed to have died. Science offers possible explanations. Amarna sits on intersecting fault lines, which could produce infrasound frequencies below human hearing that induce dread. The city's unique acoustics, designed for open-air worship, might amplify distant noises into ghostly echoes. Yet none of this accounts for the visceral fear that grips visitors, the overwhelming sense of being watched. As one Egyptologist put it after a particularly unnerving survey, Amarna doesn't feel abandoned, it feels waiting. And perhaps that's the true curse, not ghosts, but the weight of a history too volatile to stay buried. A king's defiance, a people's vengeance, and a city forever caught between. Some places aren't just haunted by the dead, but by the choices of those who live. Amarna's whispers aren't about revenge, they're a warning. Disturb the balance and the balance remembers. Hidden within the fragile papyrus pages of the Book of the Dead lies one of ancient Egypt's most terrifying deterrents. Not just a curse, but a meticulously detailed roadmap of divine punishment awaiting those who violate sacred spaces. Among its spells, one stands out for its visceral horror, the threat of being devoured by Ammit the Devourer. This nightmarish creature, part lion, part hippopotamus, part crocodile, wasn't some abstract symbol. The texts describe her waiting by the scales of judgment in the afterlife, ready to consume the hearts of the unworthy. But here's what few realize: these warnings weren't just about the next life. They were psychological warfare for the living, a graphic playbook of consequences meant to terrify tomb raiders into abandoning their plans. What makes these spells so chilling is their specificity. Spell 125, for instance, doesn't just mention Ammit. It itemizes every organ she'd tear through first, describing how the condemned would feel their own soul dissolving in her jaws. Other passages detail secondary punishments, being forced to eat excrement in the underworld, walking eternally upside down, or having one's shadow peeled away like a cloak. These weren't vague threats, but carefully crafted mental images designed to burrow into the subconscious. When a thief pried open a sarcophagus by torchlight, it wasn't just gold he feared losing, it was the certainty that his afterlife would become an unending scream. Modern archaeologists have found evidence these curses worked. At Deir el-Medina, the workmen's village near the Valley of the Kings, Ostraka fragments reveal thieves confessing to abandoning loot after hearing the whispers of Amit's jaws. But the real genius lay in how the Egyptians weaponized belief. Tombs often placed copies of these spells near entrances, ensuring intruders would see them first. Some even included illustrations, full-color depictions of Amit mid-feast, her muzzle stained with ethereal blood. The psychological impact must have been paralyzing. Imagine being alone in a dark chamber, holding a stolen amulet when your torchlight reveals a painting of the very demon now destined to hunt you. Yet there's a twist the ancients couldn't have predicted. Today, museums display these cursed texts openly, and scholars handle them without catastrophe. Does that mean the spells lost their power? Not necessarily. Some researchers suggest the curses were always context-dependent, activated by malicious intent rather than mere contact. There are unsettling modern accounts, like that of a graduate student who mocked the Book of the Dead during a thesis presentation, only to develop a sudden illness matching the symptoms in the very spell he'd ridiculed. Whether coincidence or something more, the pattern echoes an old truth. Words have weight, especially when they've waited millennia to be heard. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect is how these ancient threats parallel modern concepts of psychological deterrence. The Book of the Dead's curses functioned like an advanced security system, one that didn't just protect physical treasures but attacked the would-be thief's deepest fears. In an era before alarms or cameras, the Egyptians engineered something far more potent, a weapon that turned the imagination against itself. And judging by the number of intact tombs found with untouched curses still glaring from the walls, it worked all too well. The message was clear: some punishments don't need gods to enforce them. Just the right words written in the right place can make a person's own mind become the prison. In the cutthroat world of Egyptology, few names stir as much fascination and controversy as Zahi Hawass. The flamboyant archaeologist became synonymous with Egyptian antiquities, his trademark fedora appearing in documentaries and press conferences for decades. But behind the glamour, whispers swirled about rivals who mysteriously faltered during his ascent. None fueled speculation more than the sudden death of Abdul-Halim Nur el-Din, Hawass's most vocal critic. El-Din wasn't just any scholar. As former head of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, he'd publicly clashed with Hawass over excavation rights and theories about the pyramids. Their feud reached its peak in 2006 when El-Din openly accused Hawass of monopolizing access to key sites. Then, just months later, El-Din collapsed at a Cairo cafe, dead at 66 from what doctors called a massive coronary. The timing seemed too perfect for conspiracy theorists, who noted Hawass was appointed to El-Din's former position shortly after. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some claimed El-Din had been on the verge of exposing financial irregularities. Others whispered about a cursed Ushabti figurine mailed to his home weeks prior. What makes this alleged curse so unsettling is its modern twist. Unlike ancient tombs with inscribed warnings, this was a 21st century drama blending professional rivalry and eerie coincidence. Hawass himself fueled speculation with cryptic comments, once joking in an interview that the desert reclaims those who fight her secrets. Critics pointed to other figures who'd opposed Hawass meeting strange fates. A French archaeologist who vanished during a Nile cruise after disputing his theories, a journalist who suffered a stroke mid-interview while grilling him about artifact loans. Skeptics dismissed the pattern as selection bias. Hawass had hundreds of academic adversaries, most unharmed, but the legends persisted. Forensic scrutiny offers little clarity. Eldin's autopsy showed severe atherosclerosis, a plausible cause of death. Yet those who knew him insist he'd been in robust health with no prior cardiac symptoms. The stolen Ushabti mentioned in gossip columns was never found, if it existed at all. What remains is the uncomfortable reality that Egyptology's political battlefield often mirrors the tombs it studies, full of hidden traps and unresolved mysteries. Whether by curse or coincidence, the message seemed clear: challenge certain forces in this field, and the sands might bury you sooner than expected. Perhaps the darkest irony lies in how these rumors reflect ancient fears. Pharaohs threatened thieves with divine retribution, but modern curses thrive on human whispers. In Eldin's case, the real curse may not have been supernatural, but the shadow of doubt that outlived him, a reminder that in Egypt, even death can't stop a story from growing sharper with time. Of all the cursed artifacts linked to ancient Egypt, few carry as grim a legacy as the blood-red jewel known as the Nile's tear. Believed to have once adorned Cleopatra's ceremonial collar, this palm-sized carnelian stone is said to have passed through the hands of emperors, thieves, and collectors, each meeting a chillingly similar fate. The first recorded victim was a Roman centurion who looted it during Cleopatra's fall in 30 BCE. Within weeks of slipping the gem into his pouch, he was found floating face down in the Tiber River, the stone clutched so tightly in his hand that his fingers had to be broken to retrieve it. The pattern only grew more sinister over centuries. In the 1600s, a Spanish merchant ship carrying the jewels sank off the coast of Malta, drowning all aboard except for one delirious sailor who washed ashore babbling about a stone that drinks breath. By the 1800s, the gem resurfaced in the collection of a French aristocrat who went mad after sleepless nights of hearing whispers from his display case. His diary, discovered after his suicide, contained frantic sketches of the jewel with annotations claiming it pulsed like a heart in moonlight. Even modern owners haven't escaped its reputation. In 1978, a London auction house employee tasked with cataloguing the stone fell from a third-story window days later, leaving behind a note that simply read, "It wants the water back." What sets this curse apart from others is its specificity. Unlike broad tomb warnings, the Nile's tear seems to target its bearers with eerie precision, always water-related, always violent. Scientists who have examined the stone note strange properties, microscopic channels inside that somehow retain moisture despite being sealed in glass, and an odd warmth to the touch even in cold environments. Gemologists can't explain its uncanny weight, heavier than any carnelian sample on record. Some theorize it might be an ancient meteorite fragment, while others point to rumors that Cleopatra's priests enchanted it as a safeguard against thieves. The most unsettling modern account comes from a Cairo museum curator who briefly displayed the jewel in 2012. Surveillance footage from the exhibit's final night shows the glass case fogging up inexplicably, then cracking along a perfect spiral, an event conservators called physically impossible without external force. The curator, who requested anonymity, confessed that every staff member involved in handling the artifact later developed an irrational fear of swimming pools, bathtubs, even heavy rain. Whether psychological contagion or something older, the effect is undeniable. Today, the Nile's tear sits locked in a private vault, its owner refusing all study requests. Because some legends, it seems, refuse to stay buried, and some curses don't need hieroglyphs to etch their warnings into the world. The sprawling ruins of Luxor Temple have stood for over 3,000 years, but some say not all its ancient rulers have fully departed. Night guards patrolling this sacred site report encounters so vivid they've spawned their own legend, the Phantom Pharaohs. Unlike typical ghost stories, these apparitions don't wander aimlessly. They arrive with purpose, often materializing near the temple's inner sanctums where statues of gods once stood. One veteran security officer, Ahmed Hassan, described his encounter in chilling detail during a 2019 documentary. While making his rounds near the birth shrine of Amenhotep III, his flashlight beam revealed a figure seated on a fragment of broken column, a man in a Nemes headdress and golden pectoral, his skin glowing faintly as if lit from within. Hassan swore the figure locked eyes with him and spoke a single phrase in archaic Egyptian before vanishing: "Kneel or be forgotten." Other accounts follow eerily similar patterns. In 2011, a British archaeologist camping near the temple's sacred lake woke to find hieroglyphs freshly carved into her notebook, texts warning of the price of stolen moments. The script matched the handwriting of Ramesses II, known for his prolific monument inscriptions. Even more unsettling was the 2015 incident involving a group of drunken tourists who scaled the temple walls at night for photos. Surveillance footage shows them laughing until one suddenly screams, clawing at his throat. His friends later claimed an invisible force lifted him off his feet before dropping him onto the sandstone. Hospital records confirm his larynx bore faint indentations resembling the beaded collar of a pharaoh's burial attire. What makes these stories more than just campfire tales is their consistency across decades. Temple records from the 1920s mention a guard quitting after seeing a king who walked through walls, while 19th century travel journals describe European explorers fainting at the scent of lotus perfume with no visible source. Modern skeptics suggest the phenomenon could stem from the site's unique geology. Magnetic anomalies near the Nile fault line might trigger temporal lobe disturbances, inducing visions. Yet this doesn't explain the physical traces left behind, like the security guard in 2022 who found his uniform sleeve coated in resin, a substance ancient Egyptians used in mummification after an encounter near the hypostyle hall. Perhaps the most compelling evidence lies in what these apparitions demand. Unlike generic hauntings, the phantom pharaohs issue specific warnings about respect and memory. A Cairo University study comparing witness accounts found 70% of encounters involved the spirit invoking Mat, the cosmic order, as if policing the boundary between reverence and intrusion. It's as though the temple itself enforces an ancient code: tread lightly, remember rightly, or face the consequences. Whether psychological imprint or something beyond science, the message resonates through time. Some gates weren't meant to be crossed, and some kings still guard their own. Among the countless artifacts looted from ancient Egypt over the centuries, few carry as persistent a reputation as the sacred scarab amulets, small, intricately carved beetles believed to harness the life-giving power of the rising sun. These weren't mere trinkets to the Egyptians. They symbolized transformation and protection, often placed in burial wrappings to guide the deceased through the afterlife. But modern thieves have learned the hard way that disturbing these artifacts might trigger consequences beyond the law. The so-called curse of the sacred scarab doesn't just whisper threats. It allegedly inflicts vivid, recurring nightmares and physical ailments that vanish only when the stolen item is returned. Take the case of a New York antiquities dealer who acquired a rare green glazed scarab in 2015. Within days of displaying it in his gallery, he began experiencing night terrors so intense they left him gasping for air. His notes describe a shadowy beetle figure crawling across his chest as he slept, accompanied by whispers in a language he didn't recognize but instinctively understood, warnings about walking the wrong path. Doctors found no medical explanation for his sudden insomnia or the unexplained lesions resembling scarab tracks that appeared on his arms. His symptoms only ceased after he anonymously mailed the artifact back to the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities with a terse note reading, "I should have listened." The pattern repeats across decades. In 1973, a British diplomat's wife pocketed a scarab during a Luxor tour, only to develop violent allergic reactions to sunlight. Her skin blistered as if exposed to extreme heat, yet tests showed no known allergens. A dream interpreter she consulted, seeking answers outside Western medicine, told her the scarab was rejecting her, its solar symbolism turning against her in exile. When she returned the artifact through embassy channels, her condition cleared within a week. Even more chilling is the 2008 account of a German university student who stole a scarab from a museum exhibit. For months afterward, she documented dreams of suffocation beneath shifting sands, interrupted by glimpses of a hieroglyph-covered beetle growing larger each night. Psychologists dismissed it as guilt-induced until her roommate reported hearing distinct tapping sounds like stone on stone, coming from the dresser drawer where the scarab was hidden. What makes these stories so compelling is their consistency. Unlike broader curses tied to tombs or mummies, the scarab's effect seemed tailored to its symbolic role. Victims frequently report dreams tied to solar cycles or themes of transformation gone wrong. Some describe waking with inexplicable dirt under their fingernails as if they'd been digging in their sleep. Skeptics argue this is classic psychosomatic response, the power of suggestion magnified by cultural lore. Yet science struggles to explain how multiple unrelated individuals develop similar symptoms without knowing each other or the legends beforehand. Perhaps the most unsettling detail comes from Egyptian preservationists themselves. When returned scarabs undergo ritual cleansing at Karnak Temple, priests reportedly observe faint warmth radiating from some, even after centuries underground. Whether psychological imprint, lingering energy, or something beyond current understanding, the message carved into these artifacts millennia ago still resonates. Some forms of protection aren't meant to travel. And sometimes the only way to break a curse is to admit it was never yours to carry. When Napoleon's army marched into Egypt in 1798, they weren't just seeking military conquest, they were hunting knowledge. Among their ranks traveled a team of scholars tasked with documenting the mysteries of this ancient land. Their greatest discovery came in July 1799, when Lieutenant Pierre-François Bouchard uncovered a slab of black basalt near the town of Rosetta. This, of course, would become the legendary Rosetta Stone, the key to deciphering hieroglyphs. But almost immediately after its discovery, disaster struck. Soldiers began falling ill with bubonic plague, their bodies swelling with grotesque black boils. Supply lines collapsed. The once proud expedition devolved into chaos, with men whispering that the stone carried a curse for those who removed it from Egyptian soil. The scale of suffering was impossible to ignore. By August, over 2,000 French troops had succumbed to disease. Then came the British. Admiral Nelson's fleet decimated Napoleon's navy at the Battle of the Nile, stranding the survivors in a hostile land. Starvation set in, horses were slaughtered for food. Even the scholars weren't spared, several died of heatstroke or dysentery during forced marches through the desert. Locals watched with grim satisfaction, reminding the invaders of the warnings carved into nearby temple walls. He who takes what is not his will lose what is. When the British finally seized the Rosetta Stone as spoils of war in 1801, some interpreted it as divine justice, a cursed object passing between empires, dragging misfortune in its wake. What makes this curse so fascinating is its geopolitical scale. Unlike tomb-specific warnings, the Rosetta Stone's alleged malice seemed to target entire nations. The British Museum, where it's displayed today, has weathered its own share of odd incidents. Curators handling the stone report inexplicable equipment failures, sudden migraines, even one case of a conservator developing temporary blindness after cleaning it. Skeptics point to the brutal realities of colonial warfare. Disease was rampant and military setbacks were inevitable, but the timing remains uncanny. The stone's arrival in London coincided with a sudden outbreak of typhus near the docks, killing dozens. Coincidence, perhaps? Yet when a fire nearly destroyed the museum in 1850, the Rosetta Stone was one of the few artifacts miraculously spared, as if whatever force pursued it wasn't done telling its story. Modern linguists jokingly refer to the Rosetta Stone effect, the phenomenon of researchers working on its translations encountering bizarre setbacks. In 1972, a team attempting new imaging techniques suffered a mysterious power outage that erased their data. More recently, a digital archivist cataloging the stone's inscriptions developed a rare skin condition resembling the stone's own pockmarks. Science offers explanations: static electricity, allergenic dust, but the pattern persists. Perhaps the true curse isn't supernatural but historical. The Rosetta Stone symbolizes cultural appropriation on a grand scale, its very presence in a foreign museum a lingering wound. Or maybe, like the hieroglyphs it helped decode, the stone carries a message we're still learning to read. Some discoveries come with debts that can't be measured in gold or glory, only in consequences. In the shadowy corridors of Cairo's Egyptian Museum lies a mummy unlike any other, its face frozen in a silent scream, tendons straining against leathery skin as if death itself had arrived in agony. This is the infamous screaming mummy, a remain so unsettling that even veteran archaeologists speak of an oppressive dread when standing too close. Discovered in 1886 near Deir el-Bahari, the body shows no signs of traditional mummification. No wrappings, no amulets, just a contorted figure buried hastily in sheepskin, a material ancient Egyptians considered ritually impure. The gruesome details only deepen the mystery: the mouth wrenched open, limbs bound with leather straps, and traces of a poison lingering in the tissues. But what chills researchers most isn't just the mummy's appearance, it's the legends that cling to it like a second shroud. Local workers at the excavation site swore they heard faint screams echoing from the burial shaft when the mummy was first exposed to air. Decades later, night guards at the museum reported similar phenomena, a low guttural moan emanating from its display case when no one was near. Scientists initially dismissed these accounts as wind or shifting timbers, until a 2012 infrared scan captured something inexplicable: a temperature drop of exactly 10 degrees around the mummy at the same time each night, as if something invisible drew breath in the darkness. The more historians pieced together, the more the puzzle resembled a crime scene. The leading theory connects this tormented figure to Prince Pentawa, a nobleman embroiled in one of Egypt's most scandalous murders. Papyrus records describe his involvement in the assassination of Pharaoh Ramesses III around 1155 BCE, a plot hatched within the royal harem to overthrow the aging king. When the conspiracy failed, the perpetrators faced brutal punishments, but Pentawa's fate was uniquely horrifying. Court documents state he was forced to ingest poison, then denied proper burial rites to ensure his soul would never find peace. The sheepskin wrapping, the bound limbs, the lack of embalming all match descriptions of an execration burial, a ritual meant to curse the deceased for eternity. Modern forensic analysis lends grim support to this theory. CT scans reveal the mummy's tongue is missing, possibly removed before death to silence him symbolically. Residue tests identified traces of henbane, a toxic plant used in ancient executions. Even the positioning of the body face down, arms twisted behind mirrors punishment depictions in temple reliefs. Yet the most unsettling evidence emerged in 2018, when audio engineers analyzing the exhibit's ambient noise isolated a faint 40 Hz frequency pulsing near the mummy's mouth. At that pitch, the human ear can't discern distinct sounds, but the vibration triggers primal unease. Coincidence, perhaps, but in Egypt, where the dead were never truly gone, even science hesitates to dismiss the whispers outright. Whether supernatural or psychological, the screaming mummy's power endures because it confronts us with something raw and human. Not just a curse, but a story of betrayal, punishment, and the desperate need to be remembered. The poison may have stilled his breath, but his scream, it seems, refuses to fade. And perhaps that's the true lesson of this cursed prince. Some silences are louder than words, and some histories refuse to stay buried. Deep beneath the sands of Saqqara, archaeologists in 2019 uncovered a burial chamber that silenced the dig site with its sheer aura of menace. The tomb belonged to an unidentified queen from Egypt's turbulent Third Intermediate period, its walls covered in warnings so vivid they sent seasoned workers scrambling for protective amulets. Unlike the poetic threats of earlier dynasties, these inscriptions spoke with chilling directness. Her wrath burns hotter than the desert sun, and whoever enters unbidden will feed the jackals before dawn. But what truly unnerved the team wasn't the words themselves, it was the reaction of their Egyptian colleagues, local foremen, descendants of families who'd worked in archaeology for generations, flatly refused to cross the threshold without first performing a ritual unseen in decades. Witnesses described the ceremony in hushed tones. At sunset, the workers lit 7 lamps in a semicircle facing the tomb entrance, chanting verses from a nearly forgotten Middle Kingdom funerary text. They scattered salt, an ancient symbol of purification, across the threshold, then placed tiny clay figurines of Anubis along the passageway as silent sentinels. Only then would they proceed, and even then, never alone. The archaeologists, initially skeptical, soon noticed anomalies that defied easy explanation. Their LiDAR equipment malfunctioned only in the burial chamber, producing ghostly double images of the sarcophagus. One team member's camera captured strange streaks of light hovering near the ceiling, though no reflective surfaces were present. And then there were the dreams. Multiple crew members reported identical nocturnal visions, a woman in a tattered blue crown standing at the foot of their beds, repeating a phrase linguists later translated as "you were not summoned." The most unsettling account came from a young conservator who woke with crescent-shaped bruises on her wrists, matching the burial artifact's descriptions of manacles used on traitors. Scientists scrambled for rational explanations. Could buried deposits of magnetite be causing hallucinations? Were the paintings laced with psychoactive compounds? Tests revealed nothing conclusive, yet the local workers needed no lab results. They knew better than to ignore warnings carved by those who'd once walked with gods. The tomb's contents deepened the mystery. Unlike typical royal burials, this queen's sarcophagus lacked a name, its surface etched instead with a single ominous symbol, the hieroglyph for forgotten, inverted, as if rejecting its own meaning. The few artifacts found with her carried curses targeting memory itself. One alabaster vase bore an inscription promising, "Your name will dissolve like salt in water," while a gold pectoral showed unusual wear, its central cartouche deliberately scraped away. Historians now suspect this queen may have been erased from records after a failed power struggle, her burial transformed into a prison for both body and legacy. Perhaps the most disturbing detail emerged months later, when researchers noticed a pattern among those who'd entered the tomb. One by one, they developed gaps in their professional knowledge. An epigrapher forgetting how to read hieratic script, a photographer unable to operate equipment they'd used for years. The curse, it seemed, hadn't brought physical harm, but something far more insidious to a scholar, the slow erosion of expertise, as if the queen's vengeance wasn't death but oblivion, the very fate she'd suffered. Today, the chamber remains sealed, its final secrets intact, because some doors aren't meant to be opened and some silences aren't meant to be broken. Rising from the sands of Dosha like a broken fang, the Black Pyramid of Amenem, Hat III casts a shadow that seems to swallow the desert sun. Built during Egypt's Middle Kingdom, this crumbling colossus earned its ominous nickname not just from the dark limestone that once clad its sides, but from the unsettling phenomena reported by everyone who's dared to study it. Unlike the smooth perfection of Giza's monuments, this pyramid feels wounded, its once proud angles slumped into jagged teeth, its inner chambers radiating an almost palpable sense of wrongness. Local farmers have avoided the site for generations, whispering that the structure isn't ruined, it's angry. Modern archaeologists know better than to dismiss these warnings outright. During a 1986 excavation, ground-penetrating radar units suddenly malfunctioned as teams approached the pyramid's subterranean tunnels. The devices didn't just fail, they displayed impossible readings, including depth measurements fluctuating wildly between 3 meters and 300. When a backup team attempted manual measurements days later, 2 surveyors claimed the corridor walls appeared to breathe in their torchlight, the hieroglyphs twisting like living things before snapping back into place. Psychologists later attributed this to carbon dioxide buildup, but the dig's lead epigrapher kept meticulous notes describing how his compass needle spun uncontrollably near certain chambers, as if the pyramid itself refused to be mapped. The most chilling accounts come from those who have ventured deep into its heart. In 2004, a joint Egyptian-German team documented strange auditory hallucinations in the burial chamber, team members hearing their names whispered from behind walls later proven solid. Security footage from that expedition shows an inexplicable shadow detaching itself from the western wall and moving against the airflow before vanishing. But the pyramid's true malice seems reserved for technology. Drones flown over the structure frequently lose GPS signals and crash. Thermal cameras display phantom heat signatures near the apex. Even basic flashlights dim unpredictably, with multiple witnesses describing the light being swallowed rather than simply fading. What makes these phenomena so unnerving is their specificity. The Black Pyramid doesn't follow typical curse patterns of illness or misfortune, it attacks perception itself. Some researchers speculate the site sits atop intersecting magnetic faults, creating natural infrasound that disrupts both equipment and human neurology. Others point to the pyramid's unique construction flaws. Unlike its carefully engineered cousins, this monument suffered structural collapses during construction, possibly trapping pockets of decomposing organic matter that release hallucinogenic gases. Yet these theories struggle to explain why disturbances cluster around inscriptions mentioning the god Set, ancient Egypt's lord of chaos. Perhaps the most disturbing clue lies in the pyramid's abandoned state. Unlike other royal tombs showing signs of later visitors, this one appears to have been deliberately avoided even by ancient looters. Scattered pottery shards near the entrance suggest offerings left in appeasement rather than attempts to enter. Modern science may never fully unravel why this particular pyramid resists scrutiny so fiercely, but the message carved into a lone stela near its base remains clear: the shadow knows its shape. Do not ask it to change. Sometimes the dead don't just rest, they watch back, and some monuments aren't ruins but slumbering sentinels of stone and silence. Beneath the moonlit sands of Saqqara, where the dead outnumber the living, an ancient necropolis hums with something beyond archaeology. This sprawling city of tombs, older than time itself, has long been a hotspot for paranormal activity, but not the kind found in campfire tales. Archaeologists working night shifts here report phenomena so consistent they've developed an informal code. Never whistle after sunset, never acknowledge the whispers, and never, ever follow the figures that move just beyond your torchlight. Take the account of Dr. Samara Kollel, who led a 2017 excavation near the Pyramid of Unas. Her team's journals describe shadowy forms darting between pillars too solid for tricks of the light, yet vanishing when approached. Security cameras captured thermal anomalies with no visible source, pulsing like slow heartbeats in the empty air. But the real terror came when workers began hearing their names called in voices they recognized: deceased colleagues, relatives, even their own voices echoing back at them. The phenomenon grew so frequent that psychologists were brought in, only to leave unnerved when one confessed hearing his late mentor's laughter from a sealed burial shaft. Then there's the infamous procession witnessed by multiple teams near the Serapeum. Around 3 a.m., when the desert cold is sharpest, guards report seeing a line of silhouettes gliding along the avenue of sphinxes. Not the hazy impressions most ghost stories describe, these figures move with purpose, their outlines detailed enough to distinguish pleated kilts and shendit loincloths. A French archaeologist attempting to document the event in 2020 found his drone footage riddled with static except for one clear frame, a cluster of heat signatures arranged in perfect formation, facing east toward the rising sun. The image matched a wall painting in nearby Ptahhotep's tomb depicting funerary priests conducting dawn rituals. What chills researchers most isn't the phenomena themselves, but the rules that govern them. The shadows never cross salt lines left by workers, an ancient protective practice revived on site. Electronic equipment fails only in specific zones, particularly near tombs containing execration texts cursing trespassers. Most unsettling are the auditory phenomena which follow grammatical patterns from Old Kingdom Egyptian. Linguists analyzing audio recordings identified imperative verbs and possessive pronouns, phrases like "turn back" and "this is ours," spoken in dialects dead for millennia. Science offers thin explanations. Geologists point to subsurface faults emitting low-frequency vibrations that could induce dread. Archaeoacoustic specialists note how Saqqara's labyrinthine corridors amplify specific frequencies, potentially creating sound ghosts. Yet nothing accounts for the personalized nature of the encounters, or why those fluent in hieroglyphs report understanding the whispers instantly, as if the knowledge bypasses their ears entirely. Perhaps the necropolis was never meant to be silent. These weren't just burial grounds, but active ritual spaces where the living communed with the dead. The hauntings might be echoes of ceremonies meant to sustain eternity, still pulsing through the stone like a heartbeat under sand. Or maybe, as one emboldened Egyptologist suggested before abruptly quitting the field, some doors between worlds were built to stay ajar. Either way, the message is clear. In Saqqara, the past isn't past, it's watching, and after dark it speaks. In the hushed laboratories of Cairo's National Museum of Egyptian Civilization, a groundbreaking DNA study of royal mummies should have been a triumph of modern science. Instead, it became a lightning rod for whispers of ancient vengeance. When researchers extracted genetic material from the remains of pharaohs like Ramesses III and Tutankhamun in 2010, their work made headlines worldwide. But behind the scenes, technicians reported inexplicable equipment failures, sequencing machines freezing mid-analysis, samples degrading overnight despite strict controls, and one chilling incident where a freezer storing mummy tissue allegedly dropped to -80 degrees Celsius without power input. Local staff crossed themselves, muttering about the dead pushing back. The controversy deepened as the team published their findings. Tracing lineages across dynasties, they revealed shocking family secrets, incestuous marriages, disputed successions, even evidence that Ramesses III's throat had been slit in the harem conspiracy described on ancient papyri. While historians celebrated these revelations, others saw darker implications. A senior lab technician, speaking anonymously, described vivid nightmares of linen-wrapped figures standing over his bed after handling Amenhotep IV samples. More disturbing were the physical anomalies. 3 team members developed persistent rashes resembling hieroglyphic symbols, while a visiting geneticist from Germany suffered temporary blindness after viewing Sekhmet statue fragments under microscope. Critics dismissed these events as coincidence, but the patterns were hard to ignore. In 2012, a backup generator failed during a critical experiment, erasing months of data. Engineers found no mechanical cause. That same year, a fire broke out in the archives where mummy hair samples were stored, flames mysteriously skipping adjacent rooms. The incidents mirrored ancient tomb curses warning against revealing hidden things, fueling speculation that genetic analysis constituted a modern form of desecration. Even skeptics paused when ground-penetrating radar units malfunctioned precisely over the Valley of the Kings during a related fieldwork project, displaying garbled text later identified as Coptic script for "Be Silent." Perhaps the most unsettling case involved the mummy of Queen Tiye. When researchers attempted to sequence her mitochondrial DNA, their computers allegedly displayed error messages in Middle Egyptian, a language the operating system couldn't possibly encode. The team's linguist translated the phrases as repetitive warnings, "The flesh remembers," and "Do not number the sacred." Forensic IT specialists found no malware or hacking evidence, leaving the incident unresolved. Similar anomalies plagued subsequent studies of British labs' fluorescent lights exploding during Ramesses II's genome analysis, a Swiss facility's alarms triggering at dawn like clockwork during Nefertiti's hair sample testing. Science offers rational explanations: static electricity, rare electromagnetic interference from mummy embalming resins, even subconscious psychological stress from handling human remains. But in Egypt, where tradition holds that names and bodies anchor the soul's afterlife, many believe some secrets weren't meant to be uncovered. As one elder from Luxor told archaeologists, "You read their bones like scrolls." Did you expect them not to read you back? Whether cursed or merely misunderstood, the mummy DNA studies taught researchers an eerie lesson. Some histories resist being written in base pairs, and some silences, once broken, echo louder than screams. Beneath the murky waters of Aboukir Bay lies a lost world frozen in time, the sunken ruins of Thonis Heraclean, once Egypt's glittering gateway to the Mediterranean. This ancient port city, swallowed by the sea over 1,000 years ago, has long lured archaeologists with its staggering treasures: colossal statues of gods, gold-laden temples, and hieroglyphic steles hinting at forgotten rituals. But divers whisper of something else lurking in those shadowy depths, an invisible force that tugs at limbs like spectral currents, as if the city itself resists being found. The first documented encounter occurred in 2001, when marine archaeologist Frank Godio's team reported sudden, inexplicable resistance near a towering statue of Hapi, the Nile god. One diver described it as swimming through syrup, his fins kicking futilely against an unseen drag. Others felt phantom touches along their backs or legs, though visibility ruled out drifting debris. The most chilling account came from a technician whose oxygen line was yanked sharply downward, only to find nothing but open water when he twisted to look. These incidents clustered near specific structures: the ruins of the Temple of Amun-Jereb, where ancient texts describe the river's breath guarding sacred spaces, and a submerged stela warning of those who stir the sleeping waters. Scientists initially blamed strong tidal surges or methane seepage from decaying organic matter, but advanced sonar scans revealed something stranger. The city's layout creates unnatural water flow patterns, with certain alleys and plazas acting like underwater wind tunnels. Even more puzzling are the electromagnetic anomalies detected near metal artifacts, fluctuations that shouldn't occur in saltwater. Some theorize the Egyptians engineered these effects deliberately, perhaps using lodestones or copper alloys to create invisible barriers protecting their treasures. Divers who have worked the site for years swear the phenomena intensify at dawn and dusk, aligning with inscriptions about Ra's cursed hours when the sun god's light couldn't pierce the underworld. Perhaps the most unsettling discovery came in 2019, when a remotely operated vehicle captured footage of sand swirling against gravity near a half-buried sphinx. The granules moved in perfect spirals, forming temporary hieroglyphs before dissolving, a phenomenon fluid dynamics can't explain. Local fishermen avoid the area, recounting legends of the city that eats anchors, while archaeologists joke grimly about never diving alone. Whether psychological suggestion, environmental oddities, or something older, Thonis Heraclean clings to its secrets fiercely. The waters here don't just conceal history, they seem to defend it. And sometimes, when the currents shift just so, divers surface with the uncanny sense that something below has been watching them back. Beneath the towering paws of the Great Sphinx of Giza, an enigma whispers through the sands, one that has tantalized explorers and terrified trespassers for centuries. Legends speak of a hidden chamber buried deep below the monument, a vault so sacred that the ancients supposedly laced its entrance with curses potent enough to span millennia. The earliest accounts trace back to the Greek historian Herodotus, who wrote of secret tunnels radiating from the Sphinx leading to halls where the gods themselves would hesitate to tread. But modern radar scans have added fuel to the fire, revealing anomalies beneath the limestone rectangular voids that defy natural explanation, their dimensions too precise to be random geology. The most infamous attempt to uncover this chamber came in the 1920s, when a team led by French archaeologist Émile Barrès used dynamite to blast through the Sphinx's floor. Witnesses reported an unnatural rush of wind as the dust cleared, revealing a descending staircase that ended abruptly at a smooth stone slab. Etched into its surface was a single phrase in archaic Egyptian: "The seeker becomes the sacrifice." Barrès' team retreated without touching the slab, but not before 3 workers fell violently ill, one diagnosed with a rapid onset degenerative muscle condition resembling ancient descriptions of the gods turning flesh to sand. The passage was resealed by order of Egyptian authorities, but rumors persist of what might lie beyond that door. Local lore adds chilling details. Bedouin tribesmen speak of a guardian breath, an invisible force said to coil around intruders' throats the deeper they venture beneath the Sphinx. In 1978, a would-be treasure hunter named Richard Parker ignored these warnings, drilling a narrow borehole near the monument's rear. His journal, recovered after he vanished, describes hearing rhythmic tapping from below, as if something were answering his tool strikes. The final entry reads, "It's not a chamber. It's watching us." Authorities found his equipment abandoned, the drill bit melted at the tip despite no signs of extreme heat. Scientific expeditions have fared little better. Ground-penetrating radar deployed in 2016 detected a massive cavity approximately 20 meters beneath the Sphinx's left paw, but attempts to map it further triggered equipment malfunctions described as impossible by engineers. One thermal camera allegedly captured a humanoid heat signature moving along the cavity's ceiling before the screen filled with static. Meanwhile, historians point to the dream stela erected between the Sphinx's paws by Thutmose IV, an inscription describing how the monument promised him kingship if he cleared away the sand. Few notice the stela's weathered underside, where faint hieroglyphs warn of the price for digging deeper. What could demand such ruthless protection? Theories range from the Hall of Records, a mythical repository of Atlantean knowledge, to the burial site of an unknown pre-dynastic ruler. But perhaps the truth lies in the Sphinx's original name, Hor-Emakhet, or Horus of the Horizon. In Egyptian cosmology, horizons weren't just boundaries between earth and sky, they were gates between worlds. If the Sphinx truly marks such a threshold, its curses may not be mere superstition, but a desperate attempt to keep something from crossing back. After all, the oldest statues often guard the oldest secrets, and some doors, once opened, might swing both ways. The ancient Egyptians didn't need supernatural forces to protect their dead. Nature itself supplied the perfect weapon. When Howard Carter's team pried open Tutankhamun's tomb, they unleashed something far older than any written curse: dormant pathogens waiting in the darkness for fresh hosts. Modern analysis of the burial chamber revealed thick layers of black mold coating the walls, including Aspergillus flavus and Aspergillus niger, fungi capable of causing severe respiratory infections, especially in those with weakened immune systems. Lord Carnarvon, already frail from a recent car accident, succumbed to pneumonia-like symptoms within months of entering the tomb. His death certificate cited mosquito bite complications, but physicians later noted his lung tissue showed telltale scarring consistent with fungal invasion. Science now calls this phenomenon tomb lung, a condition so notorious it's taught in medical archaeology courses, yet Aspergillus was just the beginning. Sealed tombs create ideal environments for preserving ancient microbes dry enough to enter stasis, but rich in organic matter to fuel reactivation. In 2005, researchers swabbing the burial chamber of Pharaoh Ramesses V isolated traces of smallpox virus clinging to the mummy's bandages. Though inert, its genetic signature matched strains that would have circulated during his reign. Even more chilling are the reports from workers at the Minya necropolis in 1974, who broke into a previously untouched tomb and developed rashes that resisted all treatment. Blood tests later revealed antibodies for a parvovirus variant extinct for over 2 millennia, suggesting their immune systems had battled something ancient. The genius of these biological curses lies in their selectivity. Just as tomb inscriptions warned of divine retribution for trespassers, the pathogens seemed to target specific victims while sparing others. Carter, who spent years inside Tutankhamun's tomb, remained healthy likely because his immune system gradually adapted to the environment. Meanwhile, Egyptologist Arthur Mace, who worked closely with fragile artifacts, died of arsenic poisoning traced to preservatives used on burial items. The pattern suggests the ancients didn't just stumble upon these hazards, they weaponized them. Archaeologists have found evidence of deliberate contamination at Saqqara, where some burial shafts were packed with bat guano to cultivate histoplasmosis spores. Perhaps the most unsettling modern case occurred in 2018, when a team excavating a noble's tomb in Luxor encountered a sealed alabaster jar labeled "For the Breath of Thieves." The moment the lid cracked, 3 researchers collapsed with seizures. Toxicology reports identified a neurotoxic compound derived from hemlock and scorpion venom, ingredients known to ancient Egyptian chemists. The jar's design was fiendishly clever. Its interior grooves allowed toxins to bond with moisture over centuries, creating an aerosolized poison when disturbed. This wasn't mere superstition, it was biochemical warfare spanning 30 centuries. Today, archaeologists don protective gear inspired by hazmat suits before entering newly discovered tombs, but the risks persist. In 2021, a conservator at the Egyptian Museum developed necrotizing fasciitis after handling a mummy's linen wrappings. Infection sequencing revealed a strain of flesh-eating bacteria with genetic markers matching samples from Roman-era medical waste. The message carved into so many tomb walls takes on new meaning in light of these discoveries. Death crawls on silent feet. Whether by design or coincidence, the pharaoh's greatest curse might not have been magic at all, but a mastery of nature's deadliest secrets, ones we're still learning to decipher. In the annals of Egyptian history, no ruler has been so thoroughly erased or so fiercely guarded as Akhenaten, the heretic pharaoh who dared to defy the gods. During his tumultuous reign in the 14th century BC, he abandoned Egypt's millennia-old pantheon, replacing it with a radical devotion to the sun disk Aten. He built a glittering new capital at Amarna, filled with art so experimental it bordered on surreal, elongated faces, exaggerated hips, a deliberate break from tradition. Then, just as suddenly as his revolution began, it crumbled. After his death, his successors hacked his name from monuments, toppled his statues, and damned his memory so thoroughly that his existence nearly vanished from history. But whispers persist that Akhenaten's vengeance lingers in the silence, and those who dig too deep into his story often pay a steep price. Take the case of renowned Egyptologist Arthur Weigall, whose career unraveled after he devoted himself to studying Amarna's ruins. In 1910, while excavating the lost city, his team uncovered a shattered stela bearing Akhenaten's name. Within months, Weigall's health collapsed, mysterious fevers, chronic fatigue, and his academic peers began dismissing his theories as obsession. His groundbreaking work on Akhenaten was relegated to footnotes, his reputation tarnished. Then there's the chilling fate of archaeologist John Pendlebury, who led major excavations at Amarna in the 1930s. After discovering a cache of rebel pharaohs' artifacts, Pendlebury suffered a string of bizarre accidents. A near-fatal fall into a burial shaft, equipment malfunctions that crushed his fingers, and finally, his untimely death during World War II under circumstances some called eerily poetic, shot by German forces while defending Crete, his body left unburied for days under the relentless sun. Even modern researchers aren't spared. In 2003, a team using ground-penetrating radar near Akhenaten's tomb reported their equipment inexplicably translating the pharaoh's name as the Unspoken One in error logs. 3 members later developed rare light sensitivity disorders, their skin blistering under minimal sun exposure, a cruel echo of Aten's solar devotion. Others speak of the Amarna flu, a recurring malady that strikes scholars after handling artifacts from the site, vertigo, migraines, and temporary aphasia that fades only when they abandon their research. The most unsettling account comes from a curator at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo who claims a statue of Akhenaten's queen, Nefertiti, turned its head to follow her whenever she worked late. Surveillance footage from that wing routinely glitches, preserving only fractured frames where the statue's angle seems subtly altered. Is this mere coincidence or something older? Some theorize the curse isn't supernatural but psychological, a manifestation of the stigma Akhenaten's name still carries in Egyptology. His reign represents chaos, a break in the sacred order of Maat, making his study taboo on an almost subconscious level. Others point to the physical dangers lurking in Amarna's ruins: unstable shafts, toxic pigments, even lingering radiation from certain sandstone quarries used in construction. But the most chilling possibility lies in the erasure itself. Akhenaten wasn't just forgotten, his memory was systematically murdered, every statue defaced, every inscription chiseled away. In ancient Egyptian belief, to destroy a name was to annihilate a soul's afterlife. Perhaps the rebel pharaoh's curse isn't vengeance, but desperation, a soul refusing to be silenced, clawing at anyone who might resurrect him, only to remember how thoroughly he was unmade. And so the pattern continues, promising careers derailed, research funds suddenly withdrawn, data corrupted beyond recovery. Even digital archives concerning Akhenaten suffer disproportionate cyberattacks, as if the past itself resists being rewritten. The message is clear: some silences are enforced, not accidental, and sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do isn't disturb a pharaoh's tomb, but resurrect his voice. The desert nights near Abydos are never truly silent, especially around the ruins of Seti I's magnificent temple. For generations, locals have whispered about phenomena that defy the stillness: the distant rumble of wheels where no roads remain, the clatter of bronze against stone long after the tourists have left. These aren't just ghost stories. Multiple excavation teams and guards have documented encounters with what they call the ghostly chariots, spectral processions that tear across the moonlit sands in perfect formation, their drivers armored in shadows. The earliest written account dates back to 1892, when British archaeologist Flinders Petrie noted in his journal that his Bedouin guides refused to camp near the temple's northern wing, insisting the area was reserved for the restless ones. What makes these sightings so chilling is their consistency. Witnesses from different eras describe nearly identical details: 12 chariots arranged in 3 rows, the lead vehicle bearing a standard topped with Seti's falcon emblem. Thermal imaging from a 2016 paranormal investigation caught fleeting heat signatures moving along the temple's processional route, a path buried under 3 meters of sand for centuries. Even skeptics pause at the 1978 account of a university team who set up motion-activated cameras near the ruins. The footage showed nothing unusual until playback revealed an audio track. None of them remembered recording the unmistakable creak of chariot axles and the rhythmic snorts of invisible horses, punctuated by war cries in a dialect linguists later identified as New Kingdom military cadence. The connection to Seti I's reign adds eerie historical weight. This warrior pharaoh spent his life expanding Egypt's borders, and temple inscriptions boast of his divine right to crush rebels beneath his wheels for eternity. One particular curse carved into Abydos's walls threatens trespassers with the endless march of the king's host, their souls drafted into an eternal army. Modern archaeologists initially dismissed this as typical royal bluster until they discovered physical evidence supporting the legends. Ground-penetrating radar revealed subterranean chambers beneath the temple's courtyard filled with decomposed chariot parts and horse remains, likely a ritual deposit meant to symbolically arm Seti's spirit for the afterlife. More unsettling still are the recent LiDAR scans showing faint wheel ruts etched into bedrock beneath the sand, aligned precisely with the ghostly procession's alleged path. Science struggles to explain why these manifestations cluster around lunar events or why witnesses reporting close encounters often develop temporary hearing loss in one ear, a symptom matching ancient descriptions of the war god's passing breath. Psychologists suggest the combination of wind funneling through the ruins and fatigue might trigger auditory hallucinations, but that doesn't account for the 1993 incident where a French film crew captured glowing orbs darting between the temple columns in a zigzag pattern matching chariot combat maneuvers. Nor does it explain why dogs within a 3-kilometer radius of Abydos howl in unison during these events, their vocalizations analyzed as mirroring the pitch of Bronze Age war trumpets. Perhaps the most haunting detail comes from an unexpected source: NASA archived satellite data. Infrared scans of the area taken during reported hauntings show unexplained thermal ribbons swirling at chariot height, their heat signatures moving against prevailing winds. When overlaid with temple blueprints, these patterns trace the exact route of Seti's victory parade as depicted in hieroglyphs. It's as if the stones themselves remember the pharaoh's triumph and replay it for those who dare to watch. Whether psychological, geological, or something beyond our understanding, the message is clear. Some battlefields never quiet, and some warriors refuse to lay down their arms, even in death. The sands of Abydos don't just conceal history, they occasionally let it gallop. The lost city of Tanis hides beneath the delta's shifting sands, its royal tombs once overflowing with gold thicker than pharaonic pride. When French archaeologist Pierre Montet cracked open Pharaoh Susen's I's burial chamber in 1939, he uncovered treasures rivaling Tutankhamun's silver coffins lined with lapis lazuli, golden funeral masks still gleaming after 3,000 years. But the real story began when these artifacts left the tomb. The first to vanish was a pectoral depicting the sky goddess Nut, stolen from a Cairo museum storeroom despite locked doors and armed guards. The thief, a respected conservator, was found dead in his apartment 3 days later, his skin mottled with lesions resembling hieroglyphic script. The gold was never recovered, but workers at the museum swear the empty display case occasionally fogs up, as if something unseen still breathes inside. Montet's own team didn't escape unscathed. His lead photographer, Jacques Vandier, developed sudden blindness in one eye after developing plates of the tomb's treasures. Doctors diagnosed it as a rare retinal hemorrhage with no clear cause. Worse befell the expedition's financier, Baron Philippe de Rothschild, whose vineyards were destroyed by freak hailstorms the year after he funded the dig. Locals whispered that the Baron had ignored warnings from Tanis villagers who refused to touch the gold, calling it the god's poisoned honey. Their fears weren't unfounded. Modern spectrography revealed several Tanis artifacts were alloyed with high concentrations of arsenic, likely an ancient anti-theft measure. But science can't explain why those who merely photographed the treasures suffered equally. Vandier's surviving negatives, now stored at the Louvre, occasionally develop new, impossible details, shadowy figures standing behind the artifacts that weren't visible during shooting. The curse took its most chilling turn during World War II, when Nazi officers seized several Tanis pieces for Hitler's private collection. A gold chalice inscribed with Susen's name was aboard a transport train bombed by Allied forces, except when recovery teams sifted the wreckage. They found the chalice intact amid molten steel, resting atop a pile of charred bones later identified as the SS officer who'd packed it. The artifact's current location is classified, but rumors persist of a Swiss vault where it's kept under armed guard after a night watchman reportedly drowned in the room's ornamental fountain, his lungs filled with water despite the fountain being dry that evening. Perhaps the most unsettling modern case involves a New York auction in 2011, where a Tanny's funerary mask sold for $12 million. The buyer, a reclusive tech billionaire, stored it in his penthouse's climate-controlled vault. Security footage from the building shows the vault door opening on its own at precisely 3:33 a.m. every night for a week before the owner returned the mask anonymously, citing acoustic anomalies, though insiders claim his hair had turned white and he refused to sleep in any room with reflective surfaces. The mask now resides in the Egyptian Museum's basement, wrapped in layers of lead-lined cloth after conservators noticed its gold alloy inexplicably darkening, as if tarnishing from the inside out. What makes the Tanny's gold different from other cursed artifacts is its apparent sentience. Unlike Tutankhamun's treasures, which struck blindly, the Tanny's objects seem to choose their victims with precision, always those who sought to profit from them. A Bedouin elder once told Montet that the pharaohs of Tanis were buried with thieves' justice woven into their gold, a concept modern scholars now recognize as early behavioral conditioning. The arsenic alloys caused physical illness, yes, but the tomb inscriptions added psychological terror warnings that the treasure would cling to the unworthy like a second skin. Science confirms that prolonged arsenic exposure can induce hallucinations, making intruders see the very curses they feared. Yet this doesn't explain distant misfortunes like the Baron's hailstorms or the Nazi train bombing. Unless, of course, the greatest curse isn't in the gold itself, but in the greed it exposes and the universe's uncanny way of balancing scales. After all, Tanis wasn't just a city of riches. It was the biblical Zor, the place Lot fled to when Sodom fell. Some escapes, it seems, are only temporary, and some gold doesn't glitter, it watches. Long before Brendan Fraser battled reanimated corpses in the 90s, Boris Karloff's bandaged face lurched across silver screens in 1932, cementing the mummy's curse into pop culture's nightmares. Universal Studios' The Mummy didn't just borrow from Tutankhamun's curse frenzy, it weaponized it, blending real archaeology with Hollywood horror to create something far more potent. Karloff's Imhotep, awakened by a foolish archaeologist's incantation, stalked London with a vengeance ripped straight from tomb inscriptions. The film's genius lay in its plausibility. Cursed scrolls, stolen artifacts, and the central idea that disturbing the dead invited supernatural retaliation. Audiences fresh from newspaper headlines about Carter's expedition couldn't separate fact from fiction, and that was the point. Hollywood's obsession snowballed, each generation adding new layers to the mythos. By the 1950s, mummies had evolved from tragic figures like Karloff's into shambling monsters, their curses simplified to a formula: violate the tomb, unleash chaos. Hammer Films' colorful reboots in the 60s introduced radioactive mummies and hypnotic gazes, further distancing the lore from its roots, yet the real-world consequences were anything but fictional. After the Curse of the Mummy's Tomb hit theaters in 1964, the British Museum reported a surge in visitors asking staff if their Egyptian exhibits were safe to touch. The feedback loop was complete. Real curses inspired movies, which then amplified public paranoia, which in turn pressured archaeologists to downplay discoveries or risk being branded tomb raiders. The 90s marked a turning point. Stephen Sommers' The Mummy franchise, while packed with swashbuckling humor, inadvertently revived scholarly debates about cultural appropriation. Critics pointed out how films reduced ancient beliefs to plot devices, stripping curses of their religious context, yet even this backlash couldn't kill the trope. If anything, it fueled it. Video games like Tomb Raider and Assassin's Creed began incorporating curse mechanics, poison traps, hallucinatory sequences borrowing equally from Hollywood and history. The irony, modern archaeologists now battle this pop culture baggage daily. Teams excavating new sites joke about avoiding the Indiana Jones effect, where locals assume any dig will trigger apocalyptic retribution. Perhaps the most fascinating twist is how life imitated art. When a British auction house sold a replica book of the dead prop in 2012, the buyer demanded a refund after claiming it caused poltergeist activity. Forensic analysis revealed nothing supernatural, just mold spores triggering allergies and paranoia. But the incident proved how deeply these stories had burrowed into our collective psyche. From Karloff's mournful monster to CGI sandstorms, pop culture didn't just reflect our fear of ancient wrath, it rewired it, turning carefully worded tomb warnings into a global shorthand for some doors should stay shut. And sometimes the most enduring curses aren't carved in stone but projected onto screens. While Tutankhamun and Amun-Ra dominate discussions of Egyptian curses, some of the most terrifying warnings come from deities so obscure even historians struggle to trace their origins. Take Babai, the bloodthirsty baboon god whose name means bull of the baboons, a primal force believed to devour souls who failed the underworld's trials. Unlike refined gods of the pantheon, Babai embodied raw violence. His cult centered around rituals involving flint knives and cannibalistic symbolism. A fragmentary stele discovered near Dendera in 2005 bears one of his few surviving curses. He will rip out your entrails like palm fibers, your name becoming meat for the moon. Modern encounters with Babai's influence are rare but chilling. In 2012, a team excavating a provincial governor's tomb in Middle Egypt uncovered a side chamber filled with mummified baboons, their jaws wired shut with gold thread, paws clutching rusted blades. Workers reported nightmares of being chased by simian shadows long after leaving the site. One translator studying the chamber's inscriptions developed temporary glossolalia, speaking in a guttural language linguists identified as Proto-Egyptian, a dialect predating hieroglyphs by centuries. His feverish ramblings allegedly included phrases matching the steel's curse verbatim before he collapsed, muttering about the opener of ways watching from the dark. Then there's Nemti, the ferryman god whose curse manifests with eerie specificity. A sandstone ostracon from the Ramesside period warns that those who offend him will drown in dry places. This seemingly poetic threat took on grim reality in 1989 when looters pillaging a riverside shrine near El Ashmanin vanished overnight. Search teams found their boat anchored mid-Nile, supplies intact, but the men's bodies were discovered kilometers inland, their lungs filled with river water despite lying in bone-dry sand. Forensic pathologists could only classify the deaths as consistent with freshwater drowning, sparking whispers of Nemti's revenge. Perhaps the most unsettling modern account involves the jackal-headed Wepwart, opener of the underworld's path. Unlike his benevolent cousin Anubis, Wepwart's cult celebrated the chaos of battle, his priests wearing wolf pelts stained with ochre. In 2017, a German collector purchased a bronze Wepwart figurine from a Cairo antiquities dealer. Security footage from his Berlin apartment later showed the artifact emitting a dark vapor whenever the moon waned. His final journal entry, written in shaky hieratic script despite having no knowledge of the language, read, "The door is ajar. He walks ahead, I cannot close it." Investigators found the apartment empty, the figurine gone, and the walls scored with claw marks no zoologist could identify. What makes these forgotten gods' curses so potent isn't their fame, but their obscurity. Mainstream deities like Osiris or Isis had standardized rituals for appeasement offerings, prayers, prescribed penances. But with deities like Babai or Nemti, the rules were lost to time. Their surviving warnings offer no instructions for survival, only vivid promises of suffering. Archaeologists whisper that this isn't coincidence that lesser gods guarded niche knowledge, their curses designed not just to punish but to erase, After all, the surest way to keep a secret isn't to hide it, but to ensure no one survives to speak of what they've seen. The vast deserts surrounding Egypt's archaeological sites hold more secrets than just buried tombs somewhere between the scorching sands and the star-filled skies. Entire expeditions have vanished without a trace. One of the most chilling cases unfolded in 1926 when British archaeologist Leonard Woolsey led a team of 8 into the western desert to search for the lost oasis of Zazura. Their last radio transmission mentioned discovering a doorway where none should be near the Gilf Kebir Plateau. Search parties found their abandoned camp weeks later, tents still standing, journals open to sketches of a rock-cut entrance covered in unfamiliar hieroglyphs. The final entry read, "They're watching from the stones." No bodies were ever recovered, but Bedouin traders later reported hearing distant drumming from the area, a sound locals associate with the restless guardians of forgotten tombs. Decades later, the desert claimed another team under equally eerie circumstances. In 1983, a Soviet-Egyptian mineral survey team disappeared while mapping the Great Sand Sea near the Libyan border. Their vehicles were discovered idling in perfect condition, engines still running, water bottles full, yet the 11 crew members had seemingly evaporated mid-task. One geologist's notebook lay open next to a seismic charge, his last scribble describing black figures rising from the dunes. Authorities dismissed it as heatstroke hallucinations until Libyan nomads turned over a camera from the expedition. The developed film showed a single intact frame, 11 blurred silhouettes standing in a circle around something off-camera, their shadows stretching in impossible directions despite the noon sun overhead. Not all vanishings stem from ancient sites. In 2010, Dr. Elise Dupré and her team of hydrologists were studying groundwater patterns near the Fayum Depression when their GPS signals abruptly cut off. Search helicopters spotted their equipment neatly arranged near a dry lakebed, including a core sample drilled that morning. Analysis later revealed something inexplicable. The sediment contained pollen from water lilies extinct for over 4,000 years, along with microscopic flecks of gold leaf matching Old Kingdom funerary masks. The only human trace found was Dupré's field hat, its brim caked with salt crystals forming spirals reminiscent of the Eye of Horus. Bedouin elders warned investigators the team had drunk from the wrong well, referencing local legends of underground chambers where priest kings sleep beneath the water table. What makes these disappearances so unsettling isn't just the absence of bodies, it's the recurring motifs across decades. Multiple accounts mention doorways or figures where none should exist. Vehicles and camps remain untouched by scavengers, as if even desert wildlife avoids these sites. Most eerie are the temporal anomalies. Watchers found stopped at different times, camera timestamps displaying future dates, or in the case of a 2017 Japanese survey team, drone footage showing their own jeep buried under centuries of sand just meters from where it actually sat. Modern satellites have since identified over 20 black zones in Egypt's deserts where compasses spin wildly and radio signals dissolve into static areas that coincidentally align with ancient maps marking places not for the living. Science offers rational theories, magnetic anomalies, sudden sand collapses, even rare atmospheric phenomena that distort perception. But the desert has always been a keeper of secrets. Perhaps these teams stumbled upon natural traps that became supernatural through millennia of storytelling. Or perhaps, as an old Saqqara graffito warns, the horizon has teeth, and some excavations wake something that should have stayed buried. Whatever the truth, one pattern remains. Those who go searching for Egypt's lost wonders sometimes become lost wonders themselves. And in a land where the dead were never truly gone, disappearance might just be another form of crossing over. In the age of lasers and LiDAR, where technology promises to unveil ancient secrets without disturbing a single grain of sand, archaeologists are encountering a new breed of curse, one that doesn't lurk in tomb shadows but in the cold glow of computer screens. They call it the digital curse, a baffling phenomenon where cutting-edge equipment fails spectacularly the moment it's trained on Egypt's most sacred sites. Take the case of the 2021 virtual scan of Queen Nefertari's tomb in the Valley of the Queens. A team from Stanford University deployed high-resolution scanners to create the most detailed 3D model ever attempted, only to watch in horror as their hard drives began corrupting sequentially. The first day's data, 12 terabytes of irreplaceable imagery transformed into garbled static, the files rearranging themselves into eerie patterns resembling hieroglyphic warnings. By the third attempt, the thermal sensors registered sudden temperature spikes localized precisely where the tomb's ceiling depicts the goddess mat weighing souls. Then there are the phantom frequencies. During a British Museum initiative to digitally preserve the Book of the Dead papyri in 2019, audio technicians reported picking up faint whispers embedded in their recordings, voices speaking archaic Egyptian phrases like "the ink remembers" and "you digitized dust." Forensic audio analysis confirmed the sounds weren't equipment interference or pareidolia. The spectral vocals occupied distinct frequency ranges unused by the recording devices. Even more unsettling, the whispers only manifested when scanning spells related to the afterlife's digital realm, the very incantations ancient scribes believed could bind a soul to its written name. Theories abound about what's behind these digital disturbances. Some physicists suggest concentrated deposits of quartz in tomb walls might generate piezoelectric effects under laser scanning, creating electromagnetic pulses that fry circuits. Computer scientists point to the unsettling prevalence of bit rot in files containing certain hieroglyphs, as if the symbols themselves carry some corruptive payload. But the most chilling hypothesis comes from Dr. Yasmin El-Masri, a Cairo-based techno-archaeologist who believes these aren't malfunctions at all, they're responses. Her research reveals that digital failures cluster around tombs containing execration texts, spells specifically designed to strike back at intruders. The ancients couldn't have predicted computers, but their curses targeted the act of seeing, recording, or remembering forbidden knowledge. In our digital age, that might include CCD sensors and solid-state drives. Perhaps the most infamous case unfolded in 2023, when a Japanese team attempted to live-stream the opening of a sealed Amarna-era noble's tomb. Viewers watched in real time as their feed glitched violently, the image resolving into a single clear frame, the camera's own reflection in a polished burial mask, despite no such artifact being present in the chamber. Seconds later, the feed cut to black, and the team's $250,000 LiDAR rig permanently bricked itself, its final error log reading simply, "Eyes not permitted." Whether it's some undiscovered property of sacred materials or a force we've yet to define, one truth becomes clear: the past isn't just resisting exploration. In the digital age, it's learning to fight back on its own terms. No queen in history has been as fiercely mythologized as Cleopatra, her suicide by asp bite immortalized in art, her romance with Antony echoing through centuries as the ultimate love tragedy. Yet beneath the gilded legend lies a darker thread, whispers of a curse the last pharaoh allegedly cast upon Rome with her dying breath. Ancient historians like Plutarch record her final words as a threat: "I will not be led in triumph," but medieval texts amplify this into a full-blown malediction, warning that those who glorify her downfall would share Rome's fate. The irony is staggering. A queen who spent her life outmaneuvering empires might have woven her most lasting victory from beyond the grave. Rome's swift unraveling after Cleopatra's death fuels these legends. Within decades of her suicide in 30 BC, the empire descended into civil wars, plagues, and the madness of emperors like Caligula and Nero. Events superstitious minds linked back to Alexandria's fallen queen. The pattern seemed to persist through history. When Augustus built his forum, he included a temple to Venus Genetrix with a golden statue of Cleopatra, but placed it so her back faced Rome, a symbolic rejection. Yet even this precaution allegedly failed. The temple burned twice within a century, and Augustus' lineage ended in infamy with Tiberius and Caligula. Later, when Mussolini attempted to revive Italy's imperial glory in the 1930s, he famously looted Cleopatra's obelisks from Egypt, only to face catastrophic defeat in World War II. Coincidence, perhaps, but the timing was uncanny enough to revive old fears. Modern encounters with the curse take subtler but no less unsettling forms. In 1963, Elizabeth Taylor's Cleopatra film became synonymous with disaster. Its budget ballooned to $44 million, nearly bankrupting Fox Studios. Sets collapsed, costumes mysteriously caught fire, and Taylor herself suffered near-fatal pneumonia after filming the asp scene. Crew members whispered about an eerie presence on set, particularly around the replicas of Cleopatra's jewelry. Decades later, in 2010, a Berlin museum exhibition of Cleopatra artifacts was plagued by mishaps. A priceless bust shattered during transport, lighting rigs fell on empty display cases, and a curator developed temporary blindness after handling a serpentine bracelet. Scientific analyses found no logical cause, leaving staff to joke nervously about a queen who dislikes travel. The most chilling accounts come from those who have attempted to profit from her legend. In 2017, a Dubai hotel purchased what they believed was Cleopatra's lost emerald necklace at auction. Within months, guests reported seeing a woman in Hellenistic dress roaming the halls at night, her passage marked by the scent of lotus blossoms. Surveillance footage revealed nothing, but hotel employees resigned en masse after experiencing vivid dreams of drowning. The necklace was quietly returned to Egypt after the hotel's owner suffered a stroke on the anniversary of Cleopatra's death. What makes this curse so enduring isn't just its longevity, but its adaptability. Unlike tomb curses targeting thieves, Cleopatra's vengeance seems reserved for those who distort her legacy or reduce her to spectacle. Scholars studying her reign note bizarre gaps in their research, vanishing footnotes, corrupted files, even entire library sections misfiled under mythology instead of history. Meanwhile, feminists and Egyptian nationalists celebrating her as a symbol of resistance report strange boosts of luck, as if the queen herself favors those who honor her complexity. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between history and psychology. Cleopatra mastered propaganda in life, crafting her image as Isis incarnate. In death, that legend took on a life of its own, reflecting back the fears and guilt of every empire that sought to claim her story. Whether supernatural or symbolic, the pattern is clear. Underestimate her at your peril, because some legacies aren't just remembered, they bite back. From the moment Howard Carter's lamp flickered in Tutankhamun's tomb to the modern-day whispers around To's restless statue, these 30 curses weave a tapestry of history, psychology, and spine-tingling mystery. They blur the line between ancient warnings and chilling coincidences, toxic molds masquerading as divine wrath, psychological warfare etched into tomb walls, and artifacts that seem to carry the weight of their past owners' fury. Whether it's the Black Pyramid's defiance of modern technology or Cleopatra's posthumous grip on those who distort her legacy, each story forces us to confront the same unnerving question. Are curses simply the mind's desperate search for patterns in chaos, or is there something older and far more intentional lurking in the shadows of these ruins? Consider the Amen-Ra mummies' alleged trail of sunken ships and burning fortunes. Could centuries of collective fear have transformed a simple artifact into a magnet for misfortune? Or take the screaming mummy, its contorted face frozen in agony. Science points to poison and ritual punishment, yet why do so many who study it report the same oppressive dread? Even in our digital age, where lasers replace shovels, anomalies persist, corrupted files, whispers in static, equipment failing precisely where ancient curses warned against, revealing hidden things. The common thread, a primal human instinct. The deeper we dig into the past, the more it seems to push back. So where does that leave us? Perhaps the real power of these curses isn't in their supernatural force, but in their ability to expose our own vulnerabilities. They thrive on guilt, greed, and the unshakable sense that some boundaries between the living and the dead, the sacred and the profane, were never meant to be crossed. Whether you believe in lingering wrath or the nocebo effect, one truth remains. In Egypt, the past isn't just remembered. It's alive, watchful, and often unforgiving. Now it's your turn. Do these curses hold real power, or have we woven legends from tragedy and coincidence? Drop your theories in the comments. And if you've ever felt the weight of an ancient gaze in a museum or encountered something inexplicable on your travels, share your story. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into history's darkest mysteries. After all, some secrets refuse to stay buried, and some discussions are just beginning.